You can get ad-free episodes of the Forest School podcast, as well as bonus episodes and exclusive access to upcoming guests to ask them questions before anybody else finds out about it, simply by visiting patreon.com/Children of the Forest. Yeah. Oh no, I'm downhill. I'm going.
Why?
I saved it. Because I'm wearing big funky boots.
And I'm Lewis.
This is the Forest School podcast.
It's mud time. It is the time of mud. Somebody wrote on our reflection board, what made you happy today? Milk! And somebody underneath wrote, mud! And I thought, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
What was Forest School? Mud.
Mud.
With a bit of milk thrown in.
It was mud.
There's some oat milk.
Quite literally.
Warm oat milk.
Yeah.
And mud.
That was a banging idea, though. We did
it was
chai
lush.
tea for people that wanted chai tea, and then we just did oat milk with. What did you put in it? Yeah.
Well, I don't really know because I sort of just left them to it. There was definitely some cinnamon and nutmeg and a little sprinkle of sugar in there, and it was very delicious.
A nice milky drink.
Yes. There were some people who just stood there going, yes, more. Yes, more. More of that. More. In a purple cup. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It was good. Recommend.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we need to... We haven't got any songs this week because, I mean, the listeners are all like, thank God for that.
Burn it. Yeah.
You mean I don't have to fast forward for 1 minute 45 in order to get to some actual content that isn't insane?
Yeah.
So, yeah, lucky you, listeners. There's no little song wars today. And we're here in the woods, and it's a little bit windy, so I hope the sound quality is okay. But we are in the kitchen behind a windbreak curtain shelter type thing. And we've just run a family festival, which was lush.
I have to explain that because whenever people hear festival, they think big thing, carnival, and
well, we call them that because we do them through the wheel of the year. So they're like little celebrations of the old Celtic festivals. So it's Ostara or Eostra at the moment, so that was our festival kind of theme. And what?
I've just made the most fucking horrible pizza.
He's just made... That doesn't look horrible, it looks delicious.
Oh, it's rank.
I mean, it's deconstructed and rustic, I would call that. With the leftover dough. So yeah, we cook pizzas and we play games and we do a bit of story, a bit of song, some stuff, and it's a really nice way. So it's like families of all ages, and it's a nice way for people who have come to our other regular sessions and have moved on for whatever reason to like come back and stay in touch. So we've got some people who, used to come to our kindergarten. I was just thinking that, and parents that you haven't seen for ages, and kids you haven't seen for ages.
Also, it helps for us to balance that thing of we have long-term groups, and it's really tricky to then try long-term groups because you come for 1 week, you don't know anybody. It's all a bit kind of like ooh.
The groups are very established, aren't they? And
also for the people who are in a long-term group, that thing of different people trying it out all the time can be,
unsettling.
So just kind of like parking it and going, this is where you can come, try it.
Yeah, when all our groups are full as well, it's like the way that we're still open to the wider community, isn't it? To find out like what we're up to and who we are.
But it links to the question that I posed you weeks ago now.
Oh, yes.
And I was doing a bit of thinking and reflection, as I am wont to do. And I was thinking about nature connection and just sort of noticed a pattern about nature connection activities that quite often they involve removing yourself from socialisation. Like, I don't think any of us bat an eye at sit spots, or why don't we go and listen to the birds, or why don't you go and identify some, let's try and identify some flora and fauna. But there was a theme through there of doing nature connection on your own, and it just got me thinking about whether you can facilitate nature connection communally. In that, not communally as in everyone in the community goes off to do some sit spots, but like actually with another person can you develop nature connection in a social setting? I've waffled around.
Yeah. And I thought it was an interesting question when you asked. I thought, let's put about that. Because I think it depends if you're thinking about, you're planning one is planning some sessions or a session and thinking about, right, I really want to like draw out or elicit some nature connection or provide some opportunities for that. So what am I going to plan in order for that to happen? And I know exactly what you mean, that often the kind of activities that we would plan in order to facilitate that connection would be things where I guess you're setting the scene for kind of moments of stillness, moments of noticing, moments of just being so in the moment that you are in connection and in communion with a tree or some plants or some invertebrates or the birds or whatever. And that is often a solitary activity because you're trying to kind of almost like build a bubble around yourself where you're kind
of... It's just you and nature.
Yeah, you're kind of tuning out the human world for a bit.
But can it be you and someone else and nature?
Well, that's what I was going to move on to. So those are the kind of activities I think where we might plan and they sort of naturally gravitate in that kind of direction because of that element of stillness and quietness and focus, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think there are definitely some planned activities that end up facilitating nature connection, which I'll come back to. But also, I think we have to remember that we can plan all the activities we want and kind of set the stage for things to happen, and then actually so much of forest school is stuff that just happens. It's actually nothing to do with us as leaders. It's just like, and the amount of times, if you think about the kids kind of noticing things and pulling others in. So, and that's whether they've got like a level of nature knowledge or a level of nature connection that's different to their peers, or it's actually that they don't necessarily have amazing knowledge about a particular flora or fauna, but they've just noticed, whereas their friend hasn't or the person next to them hasn't, and they've gone, look at this, and drawn others in. And that if you don't wade in there as the adult and go, oh wow, actually that's a lesser spotted fungal spider beetle, that if you were a fly on the wall genuinely and didn't get involved, where those conversations and those noticings and those touching things, playing with things, prodding things, where that goes when you're not around, I think is huge. Like,
that is communal nature connection.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I wonder if there's something perhaps then that's like a media bias, which is that a lot of the natural history writing and like naturalist is I think the right word.
Yes, not naturist.
Not naturist. They might enjoy it too, but that's more communal. So there's a squirrel.
Chubbs is back. Oh, I just want to bite him. His cheeky little butt.
Right, so lots of that like stereotypical writing, the stereotype in my head is like 18th century writer, diarist, writes about their experience, and it's just...
Probably a vicar of some kind.
Probably a vicar of some kind. And they're just writing about like, I walked slowly alone through the forest, and that's when my nature connection happened. And like
forest bathing and those kind of things.
Forest bathing and all those things, but that I'm wondering if that type of media, and by which I mean writing and books and stuff, whether that influences what we consider nature connection, because we kind of consider like, oh, we haven't gone on a pilgrimage, which kind of which has all these connotations of like depriving yourself of things, like you only get nature connection if you deprive yourself of of socialization, if you deprive yourself of that, and whether that is something that I don't know. I mean, a lot of indigenous practices involve like big communal things and nature, and whether I've got like a Western bias in that sense.
Well, I'm just thinking about the game that we played at the beginning of this family session that we've just done, which is a game that we invented called Find Your Flock. And you can play however you like, but we divided it up with the group in half, lots of families some of whom knew each other, some who didn't, and said, right, you guys, we're going to be the chiff chaffs, and you guys were going to be the green woodpeckers, and you go and hide. We practiced the calls, the chiff chaff call and the green woodpecker call, and then each team had one member that stayed behind, and then when they were ready, made the call, the others called back to them, and they had to go around the woods finding their flock and bringing them back to the nest. And while that was happening, we had this moment of like complete nature magic, and over in the corner we were going chiff chaff chiff chaff chiff 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 like this, and a real chiff chaff started singing back to us, and and we had dad and sister who was maybe about 8, and brother who was about 3, all just going, wow, that's amazing, chiff chaff, and that was a moment of nature connection in a very communal way, we've learned about the calls of the birds, we've chatted about how chiff chaffs have travelled around the world, and they've just arrived back in Devon this week, and it's playful and fun and silly and wow, and that moment of like I'm singing and it's literally singing back to me, like how much, and that wasn't a solo go off on a pilgrimage, deprive yourself of anything. That was just we're playing a silly game and we're shouting and and you could just walk through the woods and I could just hear like humans going whoop, 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 whoop. All over the woods. I was like, this is magic. Like I still count that as moments of nature connection.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
For sure. And that's silly and light-hearted and doesn't have any of that kind of I am going to commune with nature. Yeah, exactly.
All that stuff.
I was also thinking, sorry, were you about to say something?
No, please do.
I was also thinking about, and we potted about this probably about a year ago now, about the Nature Connection report. What was that? What was the name of it? Do you remember that? Yeah. And the findings from that were
the
that
nature connected adult thing.
Yes, that the levels of nature connectedness amongst children and young people rose according to their access to a nature connected adult. That was the most influential factor in a young person's nature connectedness, but also that nature connection was higher amongst those who had access to a green space, however small and however scrappy, but was walkable from their house, and they played in it regularly, even if it was just a scrappy bit of grass on your housing estate where you just dig up some worms or build some dens out of old bits of crap that people have left there.
It's that regularity. It's that
regularity as opposed to being taken to a beautiful garden of a stately home, National Trust style.
End of term school trip.
We are being walked around, or we're going on a family outing and a picnic.
Yeah.
That actually it was about connection with a place over time, so that you are interested in, oh my God, there's a woodlouse. What is this creature in this scrappy bit of grass? And I guess that is in a similar way what we're talking about that kind of silence and stillness and noticing and focus. It's quite hard to focus in on your senses or on small beings or on the way that the wind is moving through the trees or on a bird that you've not seen before if it's not a place that you know very well, so you're just overwhelmed with where am I going, where is this place, what am I doing now, or stuff like I'm on a family outing and my family telling me to do this thing now, and so all of that stuff, all that rubbish that if you're talking about nature connectedness, all that's out the way. It's just I'm just here to play and do the thing that I normally do, but something's different. I think that's the thing. It's the space, the mental and emotional and sensory space to notice when something is new or different to the way it was before.
Yes. So I'm wondering, one of the notes that I made was wondering about if I'm going to throw the word neurotypically out there, connecting with nature is harder than connecting with other adults, with other humans, connecting with the more than human. Right. So this is my thought, and I'm just as an abstract thought and not positive.
I'm on board. I'm listening.
I believe. Is there something about in a situation where you can connect with nature or humans, that human connection is easier or more practiced, and therefore we revert to connecting with the other humans that we're with, and is that the reason that when we think about nature connection activities, we often think of them being individual pursuits because we subconsciously feel that if another person is with you, you'll be taking the easier option, which is communicating with them instead of with the natural world. That's a thought, not a stance. I'm thinking very stereotypically of... no, I'm going to own this. I'm thinking of myself earlier in my practice, and I would have said, you know, if a group of learners were like... And if I was like, we're going to go do sit spots, so you're going to go do this thing.
Yeah.
And I would... And if a couple of people had said, oh, can we sit together? Can we go off in a pair? I would... My like immediate thought was like, well, no, because then you'll just talk to each other and then you won't be doing nature connection. And I'm not, and I probably still have that first thought now, which is maybe where I'm coming from with this thought, is like I maybe instinctively see it as an either or, and maybe that's where my thinking is flawed. Is that in my head, you know, and I've seen quite a lot of other practitioners not in necessarily in forest school settings, but in other settings, like scouting groups or school trips that I went on when I was a teacher. Excuse me. No.
Still there.
Working really hard to set up activities that contained barriers to socialisation in order to facilitate nature connection. So like taking a group out on a walk. I think this is a really common one. Taking a group of learners out on a walk and telling them where to sit. And I used to do this, where you walk along and you go, okay, here's your spot, everyone else is going to walk on. You're going to walk until you can't see that next person. Okay, here's your spot, and you walk onto it. And like, just digging into that. Like, why did I try and do that? Well, I tried to do that because I was going, you have to be on your own to get this activity right. Do I still think that now? Probably, to an extent. I wouldn't now I would probably say, like, it's a different activity to do it in pairs, to do it in groups, to do it whatever. But I just want... Do you understand?
Yes, I completely understand what you mean. There's too many thoughts in my brain. Okay, write that one down.
Sorry.
Wait. So yes, I can talk and write at the same time. Yeah. I mean, the reason that kind of activity persists in any kind of like forest school, like the outings you're talking about, and even the event I went to last night, listeners. Holy moly, it was so good.
I'm waiting to hear about this.
It was so good.
A crow just came in then. Did you hear it?
Crow? I am part crow now. That's just it. So I went to Totnes, of course, which is in Devon, because all the stuff happens in Totnes.
Because it's full of champagne hippies. I love Totnes.
Totnes has a sign that says "Welcome to Narnia" when you go there. So it was at this really beautiful setting, kind of forest schooly. I don't actually know what they normally, in inverted commas, do there. It was called the Glade, in a place called the Woodland Presents or the Woodland Presence. I don't know which of those it is. And we went there in the evening and sat around, and it was run by these three women called Isla MacLeod, who has just written a book, which I got for Christmas, called Rituals for Life. And you got it too. Okay, let's pod about it. Maybe we can invite Isla on. So she's really cool. Definitely recommend looking her up. And a woman called Holly Ebony, who was doing a lot of singing and a lot of music. So she's a kind of very nature-connected singer-songwriter who writes a lot of songs and harmonies and melodies about nature. So good. Oh my gosh. And a woman called Jade Moon, who was doing like poetry and things like that. And it was all about the seasons changing and leaving behind winter and emerging and that kind of thing.
Thanks to everybody that's rating and reviewing the podcast on Spotify and on iTunes. It really helps to get the podcast in front of more people and helps us spread the word about the amazing thing that is Forest School.
And it was magical. And one of the most magical things was that we, after kind of sitting around the circle and the fire and having a bit of a chat, we walked up into this bit of woods. So I'd never been there before, and it was getting dark, and all the birds were like doing their dusk chorus thing, and we all walked with our hand on the person in front's shoulder and kind of snaked up through the woods. And then we got to this like grove of redwood trees, and so really tall, not super old, but all like still redwoods, like really, really tall. And they'd put like the bottom, if you can imagine the bottom of the tree as the roots go into the ground, like quite craggy, sort of like folds in the bark, I guess, at the bottom, quite deep folds. And they'd put like little candles in jam jars at the bottom of every tree. So you kind of came into this glade, and maybe about 50 trees with all these candles, and then Isla was like banging a drum and singing a song, and it was just like, oh, so good. Wow. And then we were invited after having a bit of a chat and talking about the end of winter and spring and what we were going to think about. So given a focus, I guess, for the sit spot, but we were then invited to go and find a tree with a candle, be with the tree, do whatever you want to do for probably quite a long time, but that kind of time where it passes really quickly. And just a moment of nature connection, basically, is what I took it to be. So we were invited to kind of think about like what we were grateful for and what we were leaving behind from winter and all that kind of thing. And so she kind of gave her example of, saying prayer for her wasn't about kind of, whatever religion you want to follow or none. Yeah. We can still use that word pray. She was saying about saying thank you for things that you already have rather than asking for stuff. Okay. It's about like
gratitude.
It's a gratitude thing. And kind of if you're thinking about growing seeds for the future, either in your life or in the world or whatever, that you're kind of going, I'm really grateful that I have the opportunity to do that. So I'm grateful that I'm hoping that it's going to happen, but you're not asking for it to happen, sort of thing. Anyway, So she sort of invited us to think about that. I didn't really think about that. I just like lay on the ground and looked up at the trees, and they were sort of swaying in the wind, and it started to rain, and it was magic. And I sort of sat at the end with my back against the tree, and you could feel the base of the tree kind of moving because it was swaying in the wind. Basically spent I think it was probably about half an hour, and I spent about half an hour just crying.
You did?
Oh my God. Oh. It was so good. And I think it's because we don't often get that opportunity as adults to have that, yes. Like we facilitate things like that in a different way, but for groups that we have, but to be given kind of permission to do that, especially in the evening in this mysterious place, we've not been there before, and very special trees. And they'd set the scene so amazingly, and then they did these soundscapes with all these different natural instruments that they'd brought as well. What's that thing called where it's a bit of carved wood? We've got instructions for it in a book. It's a bit of wood carved in a specific way, and a hole and string tied through it, and then when you spin it through the air, it kind of goes whoop, whoop, whoop.
Oh, bull roarer.
Bull roarer. Yeah, so they had one of those, they were walking around the woods, so it was quite spooky. And I did keep thinking, if someone's just on a lovely evening stroll, they're going to be like, witchcraft! Like there's a bunch of spooky witches in the woods.
That one's crying.
I reckon it wasn't just me crying. It's like crying and smiling at the same time. But
that's less sinister. Yeah. Good. Don't worry about it then.
Lovely. But there's clearly something in that invitation to go by yourself and sit and be, and be in communion with nature. There's definitely something in it. Otherwise, we wouldn't carry on inviting people to do it and be invited to do it when we do that kind of thing. But I don't think that is the only nature connection. Like, I was just thinking about other times, when we've played those games, a bit like that Find Your Flock game, but other games where it's like, right, we're all squirrels, and we're going to build the dray, and then now we're going to scurry off and find pine cones. Go! Be careful of the predator, it's coming. And that embodying an animal in a playful way, I also think definitely counts as nature connection. And that only really works in kind of group. It's like group role play in a wildlife scenario where you are embodying that animal, and it kind of verges onto work play a bit of like, and the peril, we must gather the food quickly, all that kind of we're working together. And that is a thing of, we're in a group and we're pretending to be squirrels, and we kind of are actually squirrels right now, we believe we're squirrels. We really do, however old we are. And the fox is coming, so run. I think that counts as nature connection.
I agree.
And that is definitely communal.
Do you think, again, this is a theory, not a position, do you think you could divide up the stages of life somehow? Because what I heard from your stuff you were doing last night is that almost sounded like you were saying because as adults we don't get to do solo things, that is like an adult way to do nature connect. Like that's what adults need to connect with nature, is solitude. I'm just pulling at threads that I might have heard, but that we are saying that potentially younger learners are more adept at learning, at developing their nature connection socially, and as we mature, that something moves in a way that makes, because that almost sounds like what do young learners want? You know, what is their driving need? Social stuff, and what could be seen as like ineffective is trying to give young learners, old learners, nature connection activities.
Yes.
Do you think that's...
Well, you've reminded me of a theory. So I'm reading a book, and when I finished it, I'll give it to you, which has a rather unfortunate title of Children's Special Places. But let's gloss over that.
I'm going to go to the library. Hi, do you have... I don't know if I could reserve a book. I don't really want to say it then. Can I write it down?
Yeah, exactly. It is by David Sobel.
Oh, okay.
Exploring the role of forts, dens and bush houses in middle childhood, right? So in there, I haven't actually got to the section in it, but something that really piqued my interest and why I wanted to get it was talking about middle childhood and about your relationship with the earth at that time.
Oh, yes. I think I'd heard.
I'm just trying to see if I can. Yeah. Middle. Okay. Patterns that. So he basically, it's a really interesting book. He does he does one research study, but he does it with a group of kids in Devon, coincidentally, and a group of kids in the Caribbean, in the West, Carriacou in the West Indies, and asks them. He starts by asking them to draw a map of anything they like, but has to have their house on it and any important places where they like to play. Okay. And so he gets this like kid's eye view of
the world.
Yeah. And yeah, so it does exactly the same project in Devon and in the West Indies, and talks about, so obviously they're making places, but in the wild, in inverted commas, and making their own play spaces where adults aren't really allowed. And he says children's placemaking and how it expands their sense of self and their knowledge of the social and natural world. And it's, anyway, we'll talk about it on another podcast maybe. Okay. But he definitely talks about that thing of moving into middle childhood and having a connection with the earth that is a bit more personal to you. And that, I think, kind of chimes with what you're saying in that, because I was also thinking about myself and reflecting on my own play in nature as a kid. And there was definitely a mix of both in terms of sometimes I wanted to be with my friends and be like in the river, trying to dam the river with my friends, or swimming or picking stuff or rolling down a hill or whatever. But there were also moments where I definitely wanted to be alone while I was exploring and out in nature. But I think that was as I approached the age of sort of 9 or 10.
So I made a note about a parallel that I think I found in my reflectioning on this. Reflectioning.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. Which was, I was thinking about play for a change, and I was thinking about parallel play is, like, for people that don't know, parallel play is that thing of very young children often do it, where they are playing, they're not interacting together, but they are playing physically near each other or doing the same activity. So it might be that they're both playing with the Lego, or that they're both, more typically a like younger child thing. I hope I'm not, I know people do it older, but just to couch that it's a younger thing. And that I would say that is, parallel play is linked in my understanding with theory of mind. In that parallel play makes sense if you don't have theory of mind of the people around you, because that's quite a risky thing to then go, well, I don't, we're playing the Lego, you're not doing this thing. And then as you get older, you have this theory of mind and you want to interact with the person. And then I swapped out the second person with nature. And I wondered if younger learners do parallel play style nature connection, in that they are there, nature is there, and they are not necessarily because they haven't yet got like the theory of mind for nature. That it's parallel play, like we're saying, like you're playing in nature, you're playing with your friends, you're playing, and you're definitely picking up nature connection, but it's a different type of play / nature connection as to when I would say that adults that I know that to me give off the strongest nature connection vibes, it is that thing of I think they have theory of mind of nature, and that is their quite like
yes. And can I add yes and?
Sure.
Have you finished what you were just saying?
Never.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. No, yeah. So what about though? Okay.
I'm open to being pulled apart on this.
So I was just thinking about little kids playing with nature, because I was thinking, do I agree that there's that no theory of mind thing? Some little children have like an awareness and almost an understanding of, for example, invertebrates like woodlice or whatever.
Yeah.
That is like, yeah, you and me, we're just kind of the same and we're just hanging out. And like some of them do, some of them really don't. And they're like, I'm just going to squish this thing or whatever. It's just like, oh yeah, me and this thing, yeah, we're just hanging down there.
They see themselves as part of
I'm just kind of sort of talk to this woodlouse and I'm just going to move it over here and I'm probably going to take this home now. And, that level of stuff. And then I was thinking about older kids and the times I was thinking about myself, not just alone, but with friends as well, moving into mastery play and like dominion over nature, and whether that's also something that younger children don't necessarily have, but older children, although I guess I'm going to take this woodlouse home is also kind of...
is dominion, but also there is a developmental stage which comes around the same time as developing theory of mind, which is dominion over your friends, which is like dominion over your parents, or dominion like, which is that pushing that like I don't quite understand fully that things I can do hurt you, and so you know
that's how I learn what friendship is, by like breaking it all the time, being really horrible to my friends.
So,
pulling the legs off a spider.
Yes, but there's something more. There's something bigger than that. I don't necessarily mean like nature connection with the spider. I mean like understanding your place, world.
And your place within it.
And perhaps that is where I would say that. I mean, I know we're gonna do a separate topic on this thing, but we touched on the last episode about eco-anxiety very briefly, and that you and I were talking, and Mickey were talking about, like, it just feels wrong to like push it on people. And is that a parallel with like pushing theory of mind, pushing like, we're kind to our friends with it, rather than going, okay, but there needs to be some understanding, some freedom to explore this thing, to take this thing apart, to
Never go back to mundane marshmallows ever again. Forest School Cooking, the cookbook, covers everything from how to build and use different types of outdoor ovens, stoves and equipment, right through to a range of different meals to keep anyone full and ready for the next adventure. Get your copy today on Amazon.
There's something there, and is there then, linking with the topic of what we're talking about, is there something about making those explorations in a way that is like free from social pressures?
Yes.
That is where the solo element of bushcraft and nature connection and those activities comes from.
Adult free, even, because I was just thinking when you're talking about like the kids that we will all know who will tell you at length about like a particular plant or animal or tree, and will also tell you a lot about, and we have to take care of it, and we have to, and actually it's rare, or no, we should really, and those are the kind of behaviours that most adults would be like really pleased to see. It's like, they're just so aware, and they're not, that's so conscious. Yeah. And then, but then you really, if you really dig down and go, is that really coming from them, or is that just them showing you that they have been around quite a few adults, or one very influential adult who has, you could say, pushing that pushing that point of view, given them a script, made that awareness, and actually, is that a bit of a shame? You could argue. I'm not necessarily arguing it. Or is it about...
Here's a thought. Yeah. It's not my position.
Is it actually... It's not ideal. Is it actually better to just be able to make your own connections with nature, whether you're by yourself or with your peer group, and just discover it for a bit without having the eco-anxiety or the like responsibility aspect of it kind of forced upon you at a very early age, which then we were wondering about whether that does kind of turn people off a little bit. Like some people, there's an argument about like in order to care about it or to, you know, take care of it, you have to care about it. But we don't have to push that if, this is again just a theory, if we've given children the opportunities to be nature connected in a genuine, age-appropriate, stage-appropriate way, that we shouldn't have to go, oh, and by the way, this is really endangered now and we mustn't do this and we must do this and we must protect the habitat and blah, 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 blah. That will come later, probably a lot later than we ideally think that it should. But it will be genuine rather than, and I have learnt that this is a thing that is very, very special and precious, and my God.
Are you, if I was going to be very controversial, are you perhaps saying that connect is and connect be based? Or that there's something about being... That's very controversial, and I don't even want you to answer it. I'm going to let it sit in a thing. I don't actually like that question anymore.
Okay.
But it came out of my mouth. No, I'm going to leave it there, but I don't want to pick into it too much. I have a question about solo nature connection. If you have a... Because I think there's a difference here where we're talking about nature connection moments and nature connection as it's built up over time, right? So... And maybe the former, this like solo nature connection thing, comes with more of this idea of like light bulb moments or pivotal things. Okay, so if you have a nature connection moment in a social setting, and then you go to the same place or you do the same activity solo, do you no longer have that nature connection that you had before? Do you know what I mean? Because I think I think you could say the reverse, where there would be some people who would say, when I go for a walk on my own, I feel really connected with nature. And when I go for a walk with, you know, a group of people, I don't feel nature connected in the same way. Does it suggest that? What are you doing?
I'm eating a bit of crunchy pizza away from the microphone.
Doubled over. Now I'm going to draw a lot of attention to it now.
I didn't want the listeners to hear me crunching, so I was moving away from the microphone.
So if you gain nature connection in a social setting, does it transfer easily to a solo setting, and vice versa? Do you have is it almost like two bank accounts? Like I've got a lot of social nature connection. I don't have a lot of individual nature connection, or I've got a lot of individual nature connection, but.
I think it depends. I think it depends. It depends.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for joining us this week. This has been another episode of It Depends.
Well, I was thinking again about myself because I like doing that. And firstly, I would say that some people on walks will be like, check that out! Oh my God, listen to that! I read this thing the other day that said that actually woodpeckers are which is me. And no matter who they're with, in fact, children, adults, the elderly, your dog. Oh my God, look at the thing!
Yeah.
That's so cool! I wonder what that is. Let me identify it or talk about it. And therefore, but is that nature connection? I don't know. Then I'm thinking about hobbies that involve nature that you might do by yourself or with other people, whether that be bird watching or whether that be carving or basket making or things like that, where you're engaging with nature, and that's on another level rather than just kind of going for a walk or having a sit spot. I'd still again count that as a way that one might connect with nature oneself in a, even maybe pottery, you know, it's like you're working with, yeah. That there is, I know what you mean about like two different bank accounts, two different kind of channels.
I feel nature connected to birds in a different way when I am with you than when I am not with you.
Why?
Because you know more about birds than me, and I am sort of half eagerly anticipating that, like, you tell me who's singing, or I've just gone and heard this thing.
But is that not the same as what we were just talking about? Like, maybe you just should experience it yourself instead of having someone like me go, it's a thing!
But
it's really cool!
I would feel less nature connected.
Pay attention to it! Because I say so! I guess that's lucky that you feel that way, rather than, can you shut up and just let me like find out for myself and stop.
Yeah, but maybe there's a
banging on about it.
But maybe there's a underlying hierarchy thing here, in that when I am in nature with you, I feel comfortable that I could go, shut up about it. In the way that if I was being led as a child, if I was being led on an activity by a very enthusiastic adult who wasn't necessarily reading body language, cues, feedback, those things, that actually, a bit like you're saying about that eco-anxiety being pushed on people, that like the more nature connection is associated with...
Oh my god, there's a squirrel
so
just coming up so close.
Got a big old chunk out of his back though.
I know, so he has, or she. And a very thin tail.
Oof. That trying to do nature connection solo creates a negative memory or a negative association at a time in your life where you're desperate for social stuff, and how that impacts going forwards, then feeling like being dragged on a family walk over and over and over again, and then, you know, when you're free to make your own choice about whether you go for a walk, some people will just have a real like, God, I hated going on a family walk on my own. I wish I could have gone with my, you know, where I was going, you know, if you'd gone with your friends and it had been, you know, or your peers, or if it had been
self-initiated,
you know, those things that, like, I sometimes wonder whether we, as an outdoor the outdoor education as a whole, whether we are inadvertently conflating solitude and nature connection in a way that then leaves a lasting impression on our learners, and again, how much we like Polebridge or model talking about our own, you know, like, because I feel like lots of adults are very comfortable talking to a group and going like, I went on a walk last night and I saw this thing, and it's like that one-to-one nature connection, one to nature. Whether we could be doing more to talk about communal nature connection moments and who we were with and how it felt to be with that person and that we shared it with those people.
Yeah.
Right.
As you were talking, I was also thinking about
as you were
something
talking,
else.
I was thinking.
No, you made me think about outdoor education as a whole, and I was thinking about like the activities that we, as part of that world, like push or invite people to do, young people to do. And yeah, there's that solo thing, like we're all going to go off and be by ourselves now, and you will connect with nature because I say so. But also I was thinking about stuff where you're not on your own, you're in a group, but it's like a hardship challenge. Do you know what I mean? That's another thing of like, we're by this river and we're going to be social about this activity now. We're going to work in groups, but we're going to build a raft to get across the river, or build a bridge to get across the river, or we're going to be outdoors in the dark and we're not going to use torches, or we're going to, like, kind of a
This is what I mean at the start. I was saying that nature connection is sort of associated with like depriving yourself of something.
Yes.
That, like, yeah, that hardship, that like, you know, you don't earn nature connection in fun ways. You earn it through the hard ways, through the solitude, through the work, through the, you know, I don't think that's an association just in my head. I think that is a wider association. But But yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Saying that, like,
yeah, and I was thinking also about what you were saying about being dragged on a walk or being dragged outdoors or being made to do forest school when not only do you not like it, but it's actually really terrifying for you, or there's something in that environment that you're just not enjoying and being forced to do it.
Yeah.
Even in a group, that is a very lonely place to be if really, you're maybe the only person in that group who is finding it really, really dysregulating to walk in mud or to be in the sound of the rain, or, that is also a kind of thing where we might be going, yeah, we're really facilitating nature connection, and actually we're doing exactly the opposite. We are, just by not being aware of somebody's needs in that situation, and pushing it a bit too hard, because we just think it's great, we just think it's brilliant, and most people love it, so everyone probably loves it, when in fact kind of going a step too far or a step in the wrong direction for people at a young age in an adult-led, adult-facilitated session is probably going to do a lot more harm than good in terms of your nature connection journey, and is going to potentially turn you off it for a considerable time. That's just another thought that popped into my head as you were talking.
Yes. Do you think many people who are forest school leaders, but also outdoor education leaders of any sort, do you think they can generally consider time with their groups as time that they are developing their own nature connection?
Applications to complete Level 3 Forest School Leader Training here with us at Children of the Forest are now open. Train with me and Lewis at our woodland site in Devon. We'd love to meet you in person. Visit myforestschooltraining.co.uk to find out more.
Because I was just thinking about, so obviously there's something here which is like, when we're working, we're also juggling needs and provision and facilitating and all that thing. So maybe we don't necessarily have the headspace for it. But if you
I think we do.
We do, but less so.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
So. There's other balls in the air. But if you considered just a raw number of hours in the last decade of my life, the majority of my time in nature has been spent with a group of children. But I think if you asked me about my nature connection, I would think about setting up the sessions, doing the woodland management, and I'm not sure that, I think it would take me a little while to get to, like you're saying about the squirrel game, and we are all squirrels and we're all part of it, and again, pulling that thread from you talking about gratitude and aren't we grateful, that like I think I could take some of that and see more of my time running sessions as part of my own nature connection time, because I'm not sure I do that instinctively, and I also get that impression from other leaders. There's like that, there's the sort of the thing that comes up, it must be great to work. Oh yeah, it's great, and then the kids turn up. That thing of like, almost doing this so that you can have time in it. But do you know what I mean? I
do know what you mean. And my answer personally for that is that even if you've got loads of balls in the air with running a session, and I know lots of people listening to this won't necessarily be always in the same place all the time running their sessions, like people dotting around and bringing all their stuff and things. But I think personally the most important facet of my nature connection journey has been forging a relationship with one place. It's just years, like every week for at least 3 days a week, coming to the same woodland month after month, season after season, year after year. That has been the absolute foundation of it all. Honestly, even if you're up to your eyes in fun and games with loads of kids, you still have those moments of noticing, because it is the same place. Right. And that's the thing in the Forest School Principles when it says about long term in the same place with the same group of people. Yeah. That's why I absolutely get it, because like I was saying before, it's almost like you've only got a certain amount of bandwidth emotionally, senses wise, mentally, And if most of your bandwidth is filled with who are these people and what is this place and what am I doing here and what am I doing now, blah, 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 then you don't have the noticing bandwidth. Whereas you've got that relationship with the place, you always come to that place on these days every week, then your bandwidth kind of expands so that you can notice a wider range of things, because it's always the same. And like, I'm just looking at the larch trees now, which have just started to just get that fuzzy, like really light lime green. And that happened this week, and it's like being punched in the face because it's so different, even though it's so subtle and so sweet and soft. The fact that when I look in any direction here, I will usually see dark vertical lines crossing the sky, and now they look different. Like, they're green now, and they weren't green for months, for flipping months. You know, you notice that and you're like, whoa. I mean, that's how I feel anyway, looking at it. And I might voice that out loud, and another person I'm with might go, "You right?" yeah, I guess.
Yeah, smiling and crying.
Lordy. So, you know, and if I was just going on a walk that was with my family, I just wouldn't notice it, let alone be amazed by it. I just wouldn't even enter my brain, because there might have been always like that. Maybe that's just how this place always looks, and it's about the noticing of the changes, because you have a relationship with that place. You know what it looks like, because it's so slow. But you know, do you know what I mean? Like, the changes, it's like they were just dark vertical lines crossing the sky for flipping months. Really, like, it really embeds in your brain, in your senses, in the vibe that you get from that place.
And also that comes with stuff like, because of how lucky and, like, I'm going to pat myself on the back here, like, successful we've been with maintaining our groups and developing the long-term communities that we've got, means that when, like, as much as I try not to use Facebook, when it comes up with the memories thing, or when you go back through like Google Photos or something, and it comes up with like this time last year, and it's the same. So like, I was looking at one last year, and it was like the same people playing Conker, because I put in a picture of like you're doing a little, you know, Conkers fight or something, and it was like, oh, this is like a picture you took last year, and it was exactly the same kids playing almost exactly the same game, and I showed them, and so it's just occurred to me now that like, that is a communal nature connection thing.
Absolutely.
That, like, repeating that over time in a way that I could not have sort of gone, we're going to do a sit spot. We did a sit spot this time last year, and you were on your own. So why don't you go away and think about what you thought about last year? Like, that's ethereal and gone and whatever, you know. But what stuck was the social play element, and then that connects to the season and to the wheel. And yes,
and that I think sometimes, I don't know if you ever feel this, that when we're planning a session, go, oh, it's Conker time, so we'll do Conker Marble Run, or we'll do whatever craft that we often do, and then you think, oh, is that a bit of a cop out? Like, we always do that. I'm being a bit lazy there. I should really like vary up what I'm planning. And then if you don't, and you just go and do it anyway, and you see, a bit like how kids love a story being repeated to them and love repetition. I think kids of any age, they're like, okay, cool. Well, a bit like what I'm talking about with that bandwidth thing. It's like, I've done this before. I've done this at this time of year. Last time I did it like this. Now I'm going to add a bit to it. Like we had a couple of people whittling little gnomes a few weeks ago. And I was like, whoa, I have a memory of you doing this when you were 3. And now you're 8. And you're doing it. And now the thing you're making is like... It's the same. It's the same craft. It's the same process. But now your little person you're whittling is based on a character from a novel that you're reading, and you've thought and you've designed some clothes for it, and you have learnt the technique now of using the thumb push, so you have been able to whittle this shape, and you know, those kind of things. That is kind of, and we're missing a trick if we don't give them those opportunities for like seasonal repetition and seasonal nature engagement, I think.
Well, that example is a solo nature, as compared to the Conkers game, I think. Doing whittling and repeating that is a, like, I imagine you're sitting there, I can get into that vibe now, you start whittling and you're thinking about who you were when you were 3 and that you were in this place when you were 3, and like that's a very one person to nature thing. Well, I think there have been a lot of big waffle questions in this one. But actually I would really enjoy, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to we have a Discord server for people that are patrons, and I'm going to see if I can have a chat with the people on there and ask about like social nature connection activities, and see if we can build up this bank of like, because I think the solo ones are really they're everywhere. I'd be really interested to have a chat with those guys and see what we can come up with. Something more specific than forest school. Forest school. That is a social nature connection activity. But this is where, just to finish it off, this is where I got interested in it, because I was going, are we basically like setting ourselves up to fail by trying to do nature connection in a social setting? If it's true, like if you just hold that thought for a minute that nature connection can only happen with the individual and nature, then forest school is going to fail, because forest school is a social activity that's trying to achieve something that can't be done socially. And that's where I was trying to triangulate those points. And I think we've done that quite well. So bravo. Well done. I shall see you later. Bye-bye. You can get ad-free episodes of the Forest School podcast, as well as bonus episodes and exclusive access to upcoming guests to ask them questions before anybody else finds out about it, simply by visiting patreon.com/Children of the Forest.